Hello and welcome everybody. This is Bret Norman and I am here to introduce to you another video on the book Codeword Barbelon 666 Danger in the Vatican with the subtitle The Sons of Loyola and Their Plans for World Domination. And I would like to just quickly play you an introduction video, and it is a poem read by Jörg Glismann, Joggler 66, from the book The City of the Seven Hills, a book by Henry Grattan Guinness. Now I do the music and the video for this, and also the video for the reading, and I hope you enjoy it. And here we go. Thank you for joining me on the journey, and we are about to depart.
And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Come out of her, my people. Ere dawns that day, O people of the Lord, hear ye the final warnings of his word. Come out of Babylon, 'tis God's command, for her foretold destruction is at hand. The rod is lifted, the avenging flame is kindled, as of the old destruction came. On Sodom and on Egypt cometh now, her end amazing, suddenly shall bow. The storm of judgment from the starry height, and at the angels' blasts the flames shall write. On the darkness, it is done, a hollow sound, as of an earthquake thundering through the ground, shall answer to the trumpet in the skies. The hills shall sink, the black abyss shall rise. And leaning over, as when the tempest heel treads down the forest, Babylon shall reel and rush to ruin. Then the mitres high, the lordly croziers, and the crowns shall lie, with broken idols, altars, temples, thrones. And mid the chorus of creation's groans shall Babel's cursed presence and her pride perish, a milestone falling in the tide, flung by an angel's hand, descending dread down to abysmal lavas rolling red. Near is the day, near is the wrathful hour, when God shall break the silence of his power. O Antichrist, thy brow his butt shall be, when from his bow he sets his lightnings free. O Rome, in thee the blood of all the slain shall then be found, no covering shall remain. To hide thy horrors, heaven shall all display, and strip thy deeds of darkness in that day. Escape from Babylon, escape and flee, ye who would shun her woes, nor linger ye, nor backward look out from the accursed camp of these conspirators. For lo, the tramp of the avenger soundeth in the hall, the judge is at the door and on the wall. The mystic finger writes, Arise no more, bow with these doomed idolaters before, their altars falls no more with these deny, the temple and the sacrifice on high. Give to the Lord his glory, he alone doth mediate for men and doth atone. Abhor the priesthood that pretends to be clothed with his office and authority. Christ's holy gospel, neither more nor less, before the world with heart and voice confess. Aye, and in love unmixed with bitterness, no crucifix parade, but for the cross, count the whole world but vanity and loss. Cling to God's word, yea, take that book and be believing, blessed, fruitful, faithful, free. Come, kingdom of our God, and pass away, ye earthly kingdoms, darkness yield today. Perish, O Rome, as Babylon thy fall, arise, Jerusalem, thy God is all. Hello and welcome everybody to a new video from Joggler66 Hour of the Truth in collaboration with Bret Norman from the United States of America, my brother Bret, who is on the other side of the Skype connection that we built together to come here today on the 19th of December together for you once again to read the second part of the wonderful book from P.D. Stuart called Codeword Barbelon. We are reading book 1 that has an undertitle called 666, Danger in the Vatican, and the undertitle, even beneath the throne on the front picture, reads The Sons of Loyola and Their Plans for World Domination. This actually is this very first book all about the Jesuits. Now, I don't want to confuse you, dear listener and viewer of the video, because last time we read a part from Codeword Barbelon and we read a part from History of Protestantism, Volume 2 from James Atkin Wiley, and announced, as far as I remember, that we are probably going to read the whole 15th book of that deals completely with the Jesuits. But Codeword Barbelon is a book in itself, and it is very difficult to combine those two, and within a few pages we come to a quote where P.D. Stuart even cites from James Atkin Wiley's book. So these books will here and there intertwine anyway a little bit. But most important to make clear to you all, this book, Codeword Barbelon, is about secret societies. The Jesuits, even though everybody knows them, or thinks to know them, they are a secret society. They are even the secret society behind all other secret societies. In other words, when you think the Bilderbergers, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Transatlantic Bridge, the Chatham House, and all these organizations are secret societies, then you are not wrong. But you always have to look at the player who plays all these secret societies and who controls all these secret societies. And that, on the top, are the Jesuits, the absolute masterminds of the devil that we have in this world. And therefore, Bret and I decided that we really go on with Codeword Barbelon, and here and there, if time allows, we will have a look at History of Protestantism, but that will be another chore for me and for Bret to take on that book some other time. But now, enough of myself. First, I want to introduce to you now Brother Bret. Hello, Bret. Welcome to the call. How are you doing?
Thank you. You're wonderful, wonderful. And greetings to everyone. And, I was going to ask you, Jörg, if you would permit me to make a comment about our first reading before we proceed.
Sure.
There was something that I had found. I mean, this is interesting that the author did not insert two sentences from this quote from ex-jesuit Abbot M. Leone. Mm-hmm. And when you read it in the book, it didn't trigger anything with me. I just was like, well, what? It just didn't register right. But if you read it again on the back, there are two sentences missing from that chapter 1. Mm-hmm. And those sentences are, in those registers are recorded facts relating to the lives of each individual. And then it adds a sentence in the book, and then it subtracts one. The next one is the conduct of a light woman, the hidden failings of a statesman are recorded in these books with cold impartiality. And oftentimes with me, that's the end of that two sentences, by the way, but oftentimes with me, when I hear words, they trigger things, of course, with most minds, I would imagine, work the same way. We hear a word, and it is just amazing to me that, in America here, we don't really think about the implications of secret societies, nor do we really care for them, because we just assume that they're there to protect us. And people in my family,
Why
when
should a secret society be there to protect the public that is not even to know of these societies?
Right, but when you think of it as a government, and your government is quote unquote Christian, right? And when you make the assumption that these Catholics are all, protecting us, because we're all Christians. If you make these assumptions, you just look over the whole thing. No problem here. Both you and I, Jörg, know how wrong this is, but I'm talking about Bible Belt Americans, people that I grew up with, and they just they don't register with this at all. They think, okay, you're a conspiracy theorist, so I'm just not going to listen to you, because I listen to the nightly news, and they're serious on there, and they know what they're talking about, and the CIA, well, they really are working for our best interests, so you should just shut up, That's the kind of mentality that I just absolutely disdain. I just can't stand it. I just want to get as far away from it as possible. But unfortunately, we have so much of it here. I'm sure in Belgium it's probably the same way.
I don't think that here in Belgium or in Germany it's any other way. The people are so quote unquote brainwashed into the system that they really think that the system only wants to do good for them.
That's right.
When I started waking up at the end of 2010, the beginning of 2011, all of a sudden I found out that the food industry is not there to give us good food, delicious health building food, but actually to use every ingredient they can think of to destroy us and to poison us in any way. I'm not even speaking of vaccines. I was not even speaking of vaccines at that time. That even came later. But the point is, I always thought that when I go to a store and I buy something called nutrition, I buy something to feed my body that it needs to function, then I can, of course, not always rely on advertisements. We all know how ads work. But even though that I have studied marketing for a few years, I thought there was always a little bit of truth in advertising and in the products. And I relied on that. And then all of a sudden you find out that this system that we live in is so wicked. They even tell you things are good when they know they are bad. And I'm going to give you an example. In the evening when I eat my dinner, I'm watching almost every evening with my mother then in the meantime while eating a quiz on television, a quiz show. And in that quiz show there was a question a little bit, I don't know, a week or two ago, and that said that dealt with brushing your teeth, and the right answer was that dentists advise everyone who brushes his teeth with a toothpaste that contains fluoride to even not rinse directly after cleaning their teeth with the toothbrush, but leaving that stuff in your mouth for a few minutes so it can really work in. Because fluoride is so healthy for you.
Oh, man.
They said that on the television, and I thought, this is exactly 180 degrees around of what is really true.
Yeah.
But when you grow up in this system and you don't question the things, then you say, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. When I only brush my teeth and then I rinse directly after that, all these how do you say this, all the stuff in the toothpaste and so doesn't have the time to do its work. So yeah, I should probably keep it in for a few moments and let it really get in. Yeah. Okay. And when you do that, you are actually doing not anything good to your body. You know?
That's right.
So
That's right. Well,
my consequence in 2011, beginning of 2011, when I understood that, was that I became vegan from one day to the other, because I thought if I just eat fresh vegetables and fruits and seeds and nuts, there's no way they can poison me, because I determine what goes into my body. And
that's right.
And not they do. And that was my main reason for why I became vegan in the very first place in 2011. I'm not advocating veganism. Everybody has to make that up with himself. And I'm not even want to start a discussion about that. But the point being is that all of a sudden I was aware of that we are poisoned, and they tell us another thing. So the point that I want to come to actually is that even before that time, I was not any person who ever questioned the things that were in this system. If I, who am I now in 2017, was going back in time and speak to myself in 2009 or 2010, I would declare myself as insane.
Yep.
Right?
Me too. Yep, I would feel about the same with me living in the city and just going about my merry way and never looking into things at all, going to church, you know,
what are you talking about? We elect politicians to rule us in a positive way, right? All the rules are made for us to live in a society of peace and happiness, right?
That's what it looks like.
That's what it makes on the outside. What it does appear like on the outside, but well, then you start peeling the onion, you know.
Yes, there we go.
And when you do that, and you remove one layer, and you discover another layer and another layer, and this is actually what secret societies are all about. So they throw these secret societies, like the ones that I named a few minutes ago, the Trilateral Commission, the CFR, the Transatlantic Bridge, or the Atlantic Bridge, Chatham House, and all these secret societies, Bilderbergers. They throw these in our face. We think, oh, we found something that is not daily in the mainstream news. That is something hidden. That is something great. Oh, now we have to see what are these people doing. And then we don't see that all these organizations have the same goal, because they are directed or led by the same hand.
Yeah, that's right.
And that same hand is the Jesuits. And the problem is that the way that we grow up today, Bret, at least here in Europe, and at least I can speak for myself and a lot of my friends that I knew when I was a child and a growing up person, that we grow up not very religiously.
No, we don't.
Everything in this life is important, but religion. Everything in this life is important, but politics. And the problem is that it's just the other way around. And when you do not have a religious view on this world, you have a wrong view of this world. Because you cannot understand this world when you don't understand religion. And with religion, I am most of the time referring to man-made belief systems, because that's what the world is full of.
Yes.
You don't find biblical Christianity anywhere. You can seek as long as you want. You don't really find it. They are more or less closet people. The only thing that comes out of the closet is you and me and our YouTube channels and putting the truth out there. We are Christians who are putting that out there, but there are not so many.
Yes, and by saying the closet, we mean the prayer closet.
Yeah, and we mean the closet of, taking out the secrets, taking out that what is hidden in the world.
That's right.
Because
that's right.
The Bible, the Word of God, even though available in almost every bookstore, is hidden from the people to be read and understood properly.
Yep.
And not only because they forged the Bible versions, like you can read Gail Riplinger's New Age Bible versions and other books about that stuff.
Yep.
Not only because they forged the Bibles, but also because they say, especially in the Roman Catholic Church, that you, John Doe, are too dumb to understand the Bible, and therefore it has to be explained to you by a Roman Catholic priest. Only he understands the Bible.
Right.
So, but then you are getting spoon-fed something that you again don't investigate even for yourself.
Absolutely right. And the same thing can be said here in the seminaries, because they're run by Jesuits.
Mm-hmm.
So, same thing.
And we just live in a society today where we are not used to question things anymore.
Mm-hmm.
We are raised in a way that we bow our head to authority.
Mm-hmm.
And I have had my whole life the problem that I have a problem with authority.
Mm-hmm.
When another man, be he sex man or woman, another, I could say quote unquote human being, but I just like the words used in the Bible, and that doesn't speak about human beings, that speaks about man.
That's right.
And by that meaning all, whether male or female sorts of this kind of, let's call it race, man. I have a problem when another man claims authority over me. Why should anybody have authority over me? You know, and that's opposite to what Jesus teaches. Mm-hmm. Jesus says, you are all brothers and sisters, and he is the head. And we are all the same. Well, that's an authority that I can understand, because
mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ proved that he is an authority. He doesn't say that he is an authority. He doesn't just claim that. He came to this earth and he proved, or he came into the world and proved that he is the authority. Throughout the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, we see the power of Jesus Christ. And that mm-hmm. power gives him authority. And all the other authority that we have to deal with in our daily lives is a claimed authority. But it is talk without doing the walk.
Yes.
Who has given that authority to those people? It's not because you studied longer that you are smarter than me. It just means that you sat longer in the school bench. Maybe you had, or your parents had more money than my parents.
Mm-hmm.
And they could
mm-hmm.
afford sending you to more expensive and longer schools than I could have gone to. Mm-hmm. That doesn't make you smarter.
No.
That just makes you academically socialized.
Yes.
Huh?
Yes, and controlled to that information that you studied to some degree, depending on how you excelled in that area, you know. But should we get back to this point here that I was trying to make when I heard this reading from the back of the book? You know, you had made an intro video months ago, maybe even, I forget how long ago that was. You were sitting in your car and making that video.
I remember. Yeah.
And those words, cold impartiality, just sunk in with me. And, you know, when I think of this, I think of you know, just this kind of attitude that you find in the churches. Now, I know you haven't been involved with congregations, Jörg, and it's good that you haven't, but I have. And depending on the situation, you know, I've been open. You know, I've had problems in my life, and of course I figured, you know, back when I was going to church that, you know, church would help me to get rid of some of those problems, and to some degree perhaps they did. But the point I'm trying to make is this ritualized worship. Sometime you have to encounter, well, what is ritualized worship, and where did it come from? And, you know, this is where, you know, that I don't think many of the people in the churches are really too aware of the ritualized form of worship. It never used to be a part of the biblical churches ever. It was we've been trained into it. Yeah, I mean, it's just astounding when you think about this. You know, and I was just going to quick mention, you know, there are these words sometimes that we encounter. They trigger old memories and experiences that we should take note of and explore. For example, I've become an avid listener to Inquisition Update. And when I load broadcasts up to my laptop and listen to them on the road for work, I encounter one of these words that piques my interest. I stop the computer and take a voice memo. And, you know, we're speaking of the mother of all secret societies, the father of lies, the Bible calls him, the devil and Satan, the one who deceives the whole world. Mm-hmm. And, yeah. That's all I got to say on this topic.
So, what did you want to say about these sentences that are on the back of the book?
Well, yes, that's right, and that reminds me of, you know, well, why would we need to collect information about people on a government level?
Only if
so then it makes you think, well, why would we need to do it on a church level? That's really strange, isn't it?
The reason for gathering information has always only been one point, and that's control.
Yeah.
Because when I know something that you don't put out in the open, then I can blackmail you with that.
Yeah.
And when I know things that you do that you don't share with me, but I know them anyway, then I can predict what you are going to do next. I can predict how you are going to react to anything that I will put out there, because I know how you tick. I know how you work. I know how you live. I know how you think. And this is actually what this little paragraph on the back of the book of Codeword Barbelon says. It says,
yes,
when it is required to act in any way upon an individual. So what does that mean? Why would it ever be required to act upon in any way upon any individual? Only because I want that individual to do something that he would not do out of himself. But I want him to do things that I want to be done. Right?
That's right. And you got it.
And I want to do him things the way that I want them to be done.
That's right.
But when I say that to the people, they just give me the middle finger and say, do it yourself.
Yes.
So when I control them and I let them do these things that I want them to do, and giving them the impression that they are doing that because they want it actually to do, well, that is the master of control. That is the mastermind of control. That you are doing something that I want you to do, that you actually don't want to do, but then you do it anyway, and you do it with such a fervor, with such a zeal, that you will bring it to a conclusion that I have been planning from the beginning on. So it says here, when it is required to act in any way upon an individual, they open this book where they have everything on you. And, of course, in the time that was by gathering information most and for all through the confessional. And therefore I advise you to read the book The Priest, the Woman and the Confessional by Charles Chiniquy. And when you read that book, you will understand a lot of how information gathering went in the Middle Ages and even beyond. Because Charles Chiniquy lived in the 19th century. He lived from 1809 through 1890 something.
Fantastic writer.
Yeah, fantastic.
Can't recommend him enough. He is just fantastic. I have a few of his books, and I do have that book which I need to read on my list.
Yeah,
many things.
So we have to understand that it says here they open the book. The book that contains every quote-unquote secret knowledge about you, about your wife, about your children, about your father, about your mother, about your brother, about your sister, about your colleague at work, about your quote-unquote friends, or what you thought were friends. Yeah? When they open this book and become immediately acquainted with his life, his character, because you know the character of a man when you observe him and when you observe the people that he is acquainting himself with. So his qualities, his defects, his projects, his family, his friends, his most secret acquaintances. How can you know his most secret acquaintances? When you force them into the confession box, and when you say to them that they have to confess every sin, even the hidden sins, even the forgotten sins. They have to tell them to you, because otherwise they won't have salvation. They will go into purgatory, or they will directly go to hell. And when people believe these lies of purgatory and directly going to hell, they do anything to prevent those judgments that you put upon them as a Roman Catholic priest. And then you will tell them everything. Now you say, well, okay, but I don't have that many secrets, whatever the priest can do, I don't care. Okay, that's you, John Doe. That's me, Jörg Glismann. That's Bret. But think of this of people in certain positions.
That's
whether
right.
in the economy, banking, or any other economy, trading company, car manufacturing, steel manufacturing, weapons manufacturing, directors of schools, universities, people in the politics, be it municipal on the base ground, be it provincial or on a state level or even on a federal level, politicians even in high positions, and think about what the controlling person can do with the information of all those people. This is one of the reasons, Bret, why most of the quote-unquote politicians, because there are no politicians that you have running over there in the Congress in the United States of America and Washington, but that is the reasons why they do what they do. 95% of their acting is out of fear.
Yes, fear of man. And we know in the Bible it says the fear of man bringeth a snare.
They don't fear the Creator God. They fear the person that is in their hierarchy above them and who can make it appear or can fashion the life that way that all of a sudden they lose their jobs, they lose their money, they lose their families, their wife, their children, everything else. And because all that quote unquote is at stake, they do as they are told. And therefore they don't act as their conscience would tell them, but they act as they are told. And they are told to deceive the people, to tell them to keep that fluoride toothpaste 5 minutes in your mouth before you rinse, because that's good for you, even though they know that when you have done that for 10 years, all your teeth fall out and you're probably getting some kind of brain cancer. Maybe I'm here and there just exaggerating a little bit, but in the end, that's what's it up to.
That's right.
And the point that I wanted to make already almost half an hour ago in the beginning of our conversation is that we are raised in a world where we are conditioned. We are conditioned to accept the precepts of the society that we live in the way that they are, and never ever to ask questions about it. And even when we ask questions about it, not to ever question the authority that comes thereof. And whenever you start to question the authority, you are called a terrorist. Because when you question the authority, you don't conform to the authority. And what does it mean when you don't conform to the authority? You rebel.
Mm-hmm.
And what else is a terrorist but a rebel? You know,
Right.
the word terrorist is quite new. I don't think it is older than 100 years.
Wow.
But before
Yeah.
that, they were rebels. We know that from rebellion and all that stuff. You know, that's like dinosaurs. That's a word from 1841. Before that, there were no dinosaurs. You know, there were dinosaurs, but they were called dragons.
Mm-hmm.
But the system keeps inventing words or changing existing words into other words to give it another twist. And by that, all of a sudden, it gives it a very bad notation.
Now that's absolutely right.
For example, the word sect.
Mm-hmm.
When you are speaking about a religious sect, well, a sect is only the short for sector. It's a part of a. It's a small part taken out of a whole, of a big one.
Mm-hmm.
So by that, of course, the Roman Catholic Church always speaks of other churches as sects. Why? Because they have sectorated themselves from itself, from the Roman Catholic Church. And that's why they all get back into that right now, through the World Council of Churches and through the ecumenical movement. The ecumenical movement. That's why they talk about sects.
Mm-hmm.
All these sects actually belong to the Roman Catholic Church. They have gone astray, they have gone their own way, but now they are all coming back. But they are actually all a part of this one big mother church. The Whore of Babylon of Revelation 17. That's just one example of the word sect. You can use so many other words and get into it, but we are not here to do etymology, meaning the study of words and all that stuff. But we came here together 33 minutes ago to read from Codeword Barbelon, which we haven't
even
yet.
touched it yet.
And we haven't even touched it yet. But you know, sometimes, Bret, these conversations lead away on their own.
They do.
And that is sometimes much more interesting than just reading a book.
That's it. That is it. That is the point. Absolutely right. So last time we read on page 15, we came up to the engineer cores of hell. And I looked that up, and I put a link in that last video we made to that book on archive.org. And it has some copies made from the actual printing of the book. And on the first page, it says, Edwin A. Sherman, 32nd degree Freemason. Wow. Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. State of California. Man, that is just chilling to me because, I learned from your reading of the wonderful book. I'm trying to think of the name of it right now, and it's just on the tip of my tongue here. Rulers of Evil, thank you very much. And how the very tippy top of Freemasonry is controlled through the Black Pope.
Yeah, and Tom Friess made a very interesting remark once when he stated Freemasonry is just the Protestant arm of the Jesuit order.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And I think with that he hit the nail, how do you say that in English?
Yeah, hit the nail on the head.
He hit the nail on the head, yeah, absolutely.
Slammed it.
Yeah, he slammed it. You couldn't probably express
Sunk
it any better.
Sunk it with one blow, just poof.
Freemasonry is just the Protestant arm of the Jesuitism.
Yes.
We have to understand the Jesuits, of course, as founded as a religious, as a military order within the religious order of the Roman Catholic Church. They are a military order. That's why they are also called the Company of Jesus, La Compagnie de Jesus. Yeah, that was their initial name anyway, the Company of Jesus, and the company is a military term. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
They use every means to destroy Protestantism. And that is something, Bret, I don't know if you can bring that up. You have your computer probably right there.
Sure do.
That very last picture of the power behind the Pope, that video that we used as an introduction to the first reading.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I'll put it in.
There you have
Yes.
a quote about what the Jesuits are actually about, and I would really like you to read that for our listeners, if you can do that right now. Do you have it in front of you?
Good question. Give me just a second.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to keep talking, and I will pull it up.
Yeah, no problem. So while Bret is looking this up, this is the first video that we did on this reading on Codeword Barbelon, which we will probably continue with in a few moments. I'm sorry for all our other gibberish that you have to live up to with it right now. That video started with a special video that Bret made of me reading a chapter from the book from Henry Gretton Guinness, The City of the Seven Hills, The Power Behind the Pope. And I think that in the future that is a video that I will play while having my desktop camera running, and then here and there I will stop it and explain things to you, because Tom Friess made me attend to that point that this is a very, very important video, and with so much interesting information and so high level information that most people who are not every day busy in studying these things probably don't even understand them. And so I will take that video in another time when I have the time, and will analyze it and will make you understand what these pictures mean, why they are there, and what is the background of all that.
Yes, and I just love doing this work because, you see, this ties in what my dad was doing, what my mom was doing, what my brother was doing, ties in my whole family. And, you know, the whole point here is that, you know, the churches don't really have the ability to come out and study this unless they are somehow revealed something that allows them an open door to get the hell out of the ecumenical movement, is what I want to say. But I do have that image in front of me right now, and I'm ready to read that quote, Jörg.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, it goes as this. I think we see a picture of Pope Paul III with Jesuit first, the
founder
Superior
of the
General.
The founder
yes,
of the Jesuit.
The original founder and the Superior General, the very first of the Society of Jesus in 1540, when he was accepted by the Pope, kneeling before the Pope with a black book holding in his hands, which might be the constitutions of the Jesuits, perhaps, or maybe the spiritual exercises, or maybe all the above. I have no idea.
For sure, it contained the oath of the Jesuits, because we know that a few years before, Ignatius of Loyola already solicited the Pope and wanted him to found the order of the Jesuits, and he was rejected by the Pope. And then he worked on this oath of the Jesuit, as you know it, the oath of the fourth vow of the confessed Jesuits. And when he read that to the Pope, to Pope Paul III, that was in 1540, the Pope cried out, "Hoc est digitus Dei," which means, this is the finger of God. And I am almost sure that in that little book that we see in this painting, that the oath at least is in there. If not it's all that it contains, at least that is in there, because that made the Pope, after all, accept Ignatius Loyola's, how do you can say that, solicitation.
That's right.
To get the job, and to get the job done.
Yes, yes. So, okay, the quote goes as follows. Quote, "I cannot too much impress upon the minds of my readers that the Jesuits, by their very calling, by their very essence, by the very essence of their institution, are bound to seek by every means, right or wrong, the destruction of Protestantism. This is the condition of their existence, the duty they must fulfill or cease to be Jesuits, unquote.
So this is not so hard to understand. It says that if the Jesuits do not work for the destruction of Protestantism, they cease to be Jesuits. Then
That's
there
right.
are no Jesuits. And as it says in this quote, by every means necessary, as I remember correctly, I hope, that actually isn't just another impression for the end justifies the means.
That's right.
And that is the way Catholics think. And I don't speak of the Catholic layman. And if you are a Catholic watching this, don't feel addressed by me by that. But the Catholic hierarchy, and surely the Jesuit hierarchy, says that if the Church in the end is the winner of the actions I have taken, all actions are good. Because when the end is good, all means to reach this end are good. Even murder, even rape, even blackmail, even torture. Every means are good if the end is good. And the Jesuits are the ones who determine what is good and what is bad. For us Christians, our Creator God determines good and bad. In the Roman Catholic Church, the people are taught, especially in the education as a Jesuit, in the spiritual exercises, to accept white as black and black as white if my superior tells me so. Now, don't just look at the colors, white and black, but understand these as been said, I have to accept the truth as a lie and the lie as a truth when my superior tells me so. Even though that I know that the lie is actually the truth and the other way around, I have to accept it. And as a Jesuit, I don't have a problem with accepting it because I don't have any conscience of my own. My conscience is broken through spiritual exercises, and I, as an educated Jesuit, am just a stick in the hands of an old man who can use me in every way that he wants. I have no will of my own. As they say in Latin, perende ac cadaver. In German we have a very nice expression for that. It says cadaver gehorsam. It means obedience as a corpse, as a dead body.
Yeah, talk about cold impartiality.
Exactly. That brings us back to the book Codeword Barbelon, the cold impartiality. You can only have cold impartiality about things that you do when you don't have a conscience of your own.
Yeah, I think of that music I did for you in that poem, Jörg. I wanted the icy cold, just, you know, I think it brings it out pretty good. Anyway.
It does.
It was wonderful to do that video for you and for everyone. So I'm really looking forward to the projects coming up. So maybe we get back to the book now.
Yeah, okay. I will start on the top of page 15 to get us a little bit in the spirit of what we were reading last time. We remember that this secret monita, the secret instructions of the Jesuits, were left by a Jesuit priest in the inn where he stayed in the room of this archaeologist, and this archaeologist found it, copied it, put it back, and then left the village because he knew that he was probably sought after. Now we are reading here, realizing, and that is on the top of page 15 if you're gonna read along in your own copy of the book, which I always advise to do, because when you read it for yourself you will understand it better than if you just hear it, of course. And also you will see when we are reading and when we are commenting in here. But now for real, I'm gonna start. Realizing the significance of his discovery, for the next few days the French archaeologist labored furiously translating the work into his own language. Once done, he replaced the book and left the village, as I already told you. The Jesuit returned a few days later, anxiously inquiring after his little black book. We can imagine the look that must have shown on his face, as though he could drive his head through a brick wall, and if he was prepared to do it. He demanded to know whether anyone else had occupied the room since his departure. On being told that the young archaeologist had rented the room, he began such a relentless search that the Frenchman was compelled to leave Peru in haste. The young man eventually arrived in San Francisco, California, where the Monita Secreta, was published in 1882 in a work titled The Engineer Corps of Hell, what Bret was speaking about a few minutes ago. Consisting of 17 chapters, the Secreta Monita was considered to be the definitive statement of Jesuit tragedy, a document of monumental importance, from which the principles of their government may be delineated. The response of the Jesuits to this extraordinary revelation was to flatly deny it, saying that the Secreta Monita was a malicious forgery of one Hieronymus Zahorowski, sometimes spelled Zorowski or Zarowicz, a Pole and ex-Jesuit. According to them, it has appeared in print at Krakow, that is in Poland, in 1612 under the title Monita Privata Societatis Jesu Notobirgem, or Notobigare, anno 1612. And Zahorowski, they declared, quote, had severed his connection with their society in 1611, and he spitefully published the Monita with the cooperation of Count George Zebraski and other Polish enemies of the order. Unquote. And this we can read in Philip Schaff-Herzog's The Encyclopedia of Religious Knowledge, where this information is taken from. That's another point that I still want to make also this time in the reading of this book. The book Codeword Barbelon that we are reading here is not conspiracy theory. You will never ever hear a word of conspiracy theory coming out of the mouth of Jörg Glismann from Joggler 66. When I speak of conspiracies, I speak of real conspiracies and not theories. I speak of conspiracies that actually happen or have happened in the past. I am not a theorist. I will put the facts on the ground. And that is what P.D. Stuart with this book does. And he documents the facts. And this was one of the documents that he used here. The Encyclopedia of Religious Knowledge from Philip Schaff-Herzog. And by the way, Philip Schaff-Herzog wrote a monumental, a few thousand pages big book on history of Protestantism also. Something that you can look on. Philip Schaff. I even have it on as PDF on my computer. I don't come to the title right now, and that's not important. I won't look that up right now, but that's very interesting to have. In the book we continue. However, on the other hand, the British historian and former Jesuit novice Andrew Steinmetz, in his precisely documented History of the Jesuits, has devoted several pages to an analysis of the genuineness and history of the Monita Secreta. He concluded that the document was in accordance with Jesuit principles. Well, you know, this is a very important sentence that some people just read along and say, okay, he concluded the document was in accordance with Jesuit principles. But that's so important. We are not speaking about a secret pamphlet like the Secreta Monita. that speaks against anything the Jesuits were for. It speaks exactly of what they stand for. It explains why they are doing the things that they are doing. The Bible says, by their fruits you will know them. Now, if you ever have any doubt of the Jesuits really doing all these outrageous things that we are talking about, just look at their deeds. And then look back and see where they are founded in the spiritual exercises and in the Secreta Monita. He concluded that the document was in accordance with Jesuit principles. This document only confirmed that everything that you saw Jesuits do in the world. This is what this means in other words. Steinmetz also cites numerous documented instances of Jesuit conduct and terrorist-like atrocities in his 3 volumes, all of which tend to cast doubt on the assertion that the Monita was a forgery. What is the truth of this matter? Was the secret Monita a malicious hoax, a clever forgery, or was it a true statement of Jesuit global strategy and ambition? We are going to deal with the authenticity of the Monita and make sure that your hairs don't stand up on the back of your neck when you listen to this. According to Gretzer, a well-known member of the Society of Jesus, the Secreta Monita was a malicious creation by the former Jesuit Zahorowski, who had been dismissed with ignominy. Ignominy. So, thank you.
Or ignominy, right. Okay.
Ignominy, okay. Who has been dismissed with ignominy from the society in Poland, quote, and so as to cover his own disgrace or to gratify his revenge, unquote, he published the Monita in Poland in 1612. However, the reader should not attach a high degree of accuracy to the Jesuits' denial of the authenticity of the Monita, for Gretzer and all the other Jesuits forgot to mention one very important fact: that the Monita had been in publication long before 1612. So try again, gentlemen. That answer will hardly pass. That the Jesuits' labeling of the Monita as a forgery is Machiavellian seems to be proved by the discovery in the British Museum of a work titled Hoc Formula Provisionum Diversarum, a Gaspare Paracello Summo Studio in Unum, printed in Venice, not Poland, in 1596, and which had appended it to a copy of the Secreta Monita. Now this was a Latin title that I cannot translate, but that's not so important. What is important is what follows. That is 16 years, yeah? We speak of 1596, that is 16 years before 1612, before the alleged forgery, in a different country. And significantly, the copy of the Monita in the British Museum is in manuscript form. And we can read that in John Poinder and Charles Dallas, A History of the Jesuits, to which is prefixed a reply to Mr. Dallas's defense that the order of that order, sorry, not of the order, of that order, yeah? And this is also cited in James Atkin Wiley's History of Protestantism, Volume 2. And there we see that in Chapter 7. So that is the book that I have here, and what I told you that we're not going into, but I'm going to do this right now. It says, cool. Volume 2, Chapter 7. Well, the problem is there is no page indicated where that is, but Chapter 7 is somewhere quite in the beginning of the book, I think. So when I have to open this up here, there's an index, and in the index it says chapter, let me see, chapter 7,
Volume 2.
all these different books. Okay, I'm not going into that right now. This is too complicated.
It's probably too much.
Won't lead us anyway, anywhere of importance. But if you want to, you can look that up. Also in History of Protestantism, Volume 2, in Chapter 7 of James Atkin Wiley's work. Okay. So where did I take off here? Okay. That is 16 years before the alleged forgery, in a different country, and significantly the copy of the Monita in the British Museum is in manuscript form, and the documentation I just gave to you. This internal evidence, i.e. the earlier date of 1596, would appear to confound all arguments to the contrary. Thus, the most conclusive statement on the authenticity of the Monita comes from the age of the document itself. Therefore, the original Monita could not have been first published in Poland in 1612, as alleged by the Jesuits. It is most revealing too that the manuscript version of the Secreta Monita in the British Museum also ends with a mandate similar to that written in the book found by the young French archaeologist in 1870. There is another printing error here, because we understood last time this must read 1870. 1780 is printed here in the book.
That's
but
right.
Even though I'm quite sure that it really was 1780. But anyway, let's not discuss about this little printing error or whatever, this little mix-up herein.
Sure.
It doesn't take away anything of the quote that follows. Quote, "Let them be denied to be the rulers of the Society of Jesus, if ever they shall be imputed to us." Unquote. Speaking of the Secreta Monita, let the secret instructions of the Jesuits be denied to be the rules of the Society of Jesus, if ever they shall be imputed to us. In other words, whenever you find a document exposing the Jesuits for the satanic society that they are, they will do everything to deny it. That is like when you run down the street to chase a thief that you have been watching stealing something from somebody, and then you hunt him down, and then you bring him to the police. Will he say, "Oh yeah, of course, I did it. I was the thief"? Or will he say, "No, I'm innocent. I didn't do it. I was framed. This is a conspiracy theory. You mixed me up with somebody else"? Do you ever see the culprit admitting the crime? Do you really think that the Jesuits have gone so far as they have gone, and could have gone so far as they have come up to now, with always admitting the atrocities they did? Well, if you think that, you are still living in La La Land and have not understood that you are raised in a society full of lies. And when in a society full of lies you seek the truth, you are not one of them. You are a dangerous terrorist. George Orwell said it in a way: the farther a society drifts away from the truth, the more it will hate the ones who speak of them.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That's right.
It's not the exact quote, but in that
it's close enough.
It's close enough, yeah, to get you the understanding. Let them, the Secreta Monita, let them, the secret instructions of the Jesuits, be denied to be the rulers of the Society of Jesus, if ever they shall be imputed to us. It's the very first lesson the Jesuits get, you know. Whenever somebody out there tells you the Jesuits are bad and the Jesuits have this and this constitutions, just deny it. Just deny it. Thus the Jesuits' denials amount to thus the Jesuits' denials amount to little. Indeed, the German ex-Jesuit Count von Hunsbruck, and he wrote a wonderful book in German that I was trying to read 14 years a Jesuit, he wrote, and it's a few hundred pages, but it's written in this old fracture writing. that is very hard to read, and it's a few hundred pages long. But this Count von Hunsbruch, he wrote a very interesting book, 14 Years a Jesuit, who left the Jesuit priesthood in 1900, published a rendition of the Secreta Monita, which he translated from German. He writes in his book, 14 Years a Jesuit, here this, I didn't see it, but this is the book that I was just mentioning. He writes in his book, 14 Years a Jesuit, quote, "It is natural that the Jesuits themselves should deny the genuineness in a flood of refutations," unquote, for they were told to do so. Count von Hunsbruch then adds, quote, "Only sound proof can turn the scale against the genuineness of the Monita. And such proofs have not been produced up to now by the Jesuits, nor has any convincing invalidation of the facts advanced on behalf of its genuineness been produced. Their genuineness rely essentially on the fact that the manuscript copies of the Monita, upon which the printed edition is based, were to be found in Jesuit colleges. The discovery of such copies in the Jesuit colleges of Prague, Paris, Bourmont, which is in Netherlands, Munich in Germany, and Paderborn in Westphalia, also Germany, is beyond question. The copy in the Jesuit house in Paderborn was found in a cupboard in the rector's room, in Scriniis Rectoris. The manuscript copy at Munich, belonging to the contents of the library of the Jesuit college of this place, which was suppressed in 1773, was only found in 1870 in a secret recess behind the altar of the old Jesuit church of St. Michael at Munich. Therefore, what the Jesuit writes to the contrary is of no value." Unquote. Now, we are reading here about the University of Munich, right? You have to understand that the University of Munich mentioned here is to you probably better known as the former University of Ingolstadt. Because the University of Ingolstadt, where Adam Weishaupt founded the Illuminati in 1776, was shut down a few years later and then continued as the Jesuit University of Munich. Okay? But that is a fact not known to many people. I'm going to continue a little bit longer, but I'm not going to make this too long today because we already reached an hour. And I know that with a subject like this, it is hard to follow for more than an hour. But dear listener, you have had a half hour of interesting conversation before the actual start of the reading. So allow me please to continue until the next under chapter starts. That is called A Great Secret, the Constitutions of the Jesuits, and that is on the bottom of page 19, and we are now in page 17, so I will continue reading up to there. But is there any comment that you want to make up to here, Bret?
Nope, not at all. I'm going to mute my mic. All right, you go for it. I love it.
So the book continues. The story of the Monita in Westphalia had its genesis after the Duke of Brunswick took Paderborn and seized the Jesuit college there and gave their library and papers to the Capuchin monks, who made them public. Now, what are we reading here? The secular power of Westphalia, the Duke of Brunswick, took Paderborn and seized the Jesuit college and gave their complete library and papers to Capuchin monks, who made them public. So he gave the papers of a library of a secret society of the Roman Catholic Church to another order of monks of the Roman Catholic Church, who have probably even not been familiar with the Jesuits at that time, because otherwise I don't understand why would they ever have made it public. Now,
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. Among the papers was a copy of the Monita. Again, At the end of that copy of the Secreta Monita, found in the Jesuit library at Paderborn, is a similar injunction to that found in the copy translated by the French archaeologist in 1870. So this is already the third time that we see that what our French archaeologist found in 1870, and here is the correct date given this time, Bret, so you saw that correctly. With 1780, that was a printing error before, in 1870.
Yes, that's right.
We see this here on the bottom of page 17. We see here already the third confirmation that the paper that French archaeologist translated into his own language and brought out in 1882 in the work that was called The Engineer Corps of Hell is legitimate, is the original work. This is the third proof. Quote, if these rules fall into the hands of strangers, they must be positively denied to be the rulers of the society. What have we read before? Quote, let them be denied to be the rulers of the society of Jesus, if ever they shall be imputed to us. Saying the same thing with other words.
That's it.
But that's what the Jesuits do. They don't tell you a different history, but they tell the history differently.
That sounds very familiar, Jörg.
That is taken from the paper From Conflict to Communion.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Continue, please.
If the Jesuits did not write the Monita, then it would seem logical that the most reliable source of such a document must have been an ex-Jesuit, for no active Jesuit would reveal the inner workings of his order, nor indeed could a non-Jesuit have written the Monita, for so closely does it reflect the inner workings of the Society of Jesus. So closely does it reflect the inner workings of the secret society of the Company of Jesus that it must have been written by a Jesuit. It is impossible for an outstander to have that kind of insight. If it is not their work, it is a very good apocrypha by someone who knew their Kabbalah.
Oh, man.
Indeed, we cannot do better here than to quote the searching observation of James Atkin Wiley, who lived between 1808 and 1890. I said 1809. Okay, I made him a year younger. I'm sorry. Quote,
no problem.
The perfect uniformity of the methods followed by the Jesuits in all countries favored the presumption that they acted upon a prescribed rule, and the exact correspondence between their methods and the secret advice the Monita showed that this was the rule. Unquote. Even if we choose to be skeptical, like historian G.B. Nicolini, we would still be forced to admit that he did, that even if, quote, apocryphal, it certainly gives a true representation of the horrible arts and practices of the Jesuits. And we are inclined to credit the Jesuits when they assert that the book in the work of a discarded brother, an ex-Jesuit, so deeply does it, the Monita, initiate us in the secret arts of the society. Unquote. Since the Monita Secreta was first discovered, numerous editions have been found in different places. In so many languages, says Wiley, that the idea of collusion, meaning fraud or forgery, is even out of the question. These editions all agree, with the exception of a few unimportant variations in the reading. These records, writes Robert Breckenridge, are found in the Latin, Italian, German, French and English languages. They extend over a period exceeding 200 years. They were found in 5 or 6 sovereign states, the most of which professed the Catholic faith, and one of them, Venice, under the very eyes of the sovereign pontiff. And they all agree in every fact. Now he adds, quote, "It would be the most incredible event ever established by proof if this various and concurring evidence should be proven to all, all be false," unquote. For all the above reasons, I am inclined to think the Secreta Monita is genuine. This is P.D. Stuart speaking. Those who still choose to believe the claim of the Jesuits that the Monita was a forgery by the former Jesuit Zaharowski, published out of pure revenge, are reminded that it is not safe to believe the testimony of liars, especially when their expressed doctrines instruct them to dissemble in order to safeguard the quote-unquote good name of their order. As one author observed, the Jesuits have a double rule, quote, one for their private and particular use, and another to flaunt with before the world. We know this as esoteric and exoteric teaching.
Yep. Nailed it.
Indeed, the Jesuit historians have shown a slick propensity to alter the records of the past and to write as facts that which history shows to be utterly without foundation. As some witty person once said, God himself cannot alter the past, only Jesuit historians can. But leaving aside any alleged circumstantially of the evidence, i.e. whether or not it can be proved for a fact that the Monita is genuine, we have a more authoritative source of Jesuit stratagem, the constitutions of the Jesuits. The contents of this document no Jesuit can deny. And why is that and how is that? We are going to learn of the secret instructions in the next reading. And then we are going into, I think here, Victor Hugo and all that stuff in France. So we are going into that trial that was made there, and they had to put the secret instructions out in the open in a trial in France in that time. But that is something that we will deal with probably with the next reading under the under chapter name A Great Secret, the Constitutions of the Jesuits. So we have the secret instructions on the one hand, and then we have the constitutions. And yes, I'm going to take away the climax. The constitutions of the Jesuits reflect the secret instructions of the Jesuits. When you know the one, you know the other. That's what it comes down to. So I'm done reading for today, Bret, because we have reached almost 75 minutes. Isn't there anything that you want to comment on what I have read up to now? Do you have any more?
Oh, you know, this double rule here. This this quote from P.D. Stuart here. What was it here? Trying to look back here quick. As the author once observed, the Jesuits have a double rule.
One
quote,
for the private and particular use, and another to flaunt with before the world. Esoteric and
Tom
exoteric.
would have something interesting to say about that too if he was here. But anyway, I think we should close it up. And it's been fantastic to have you, Jörg. And love the readings you do, and I'm looking forward to digging more into this book when I get the spare time over the next couple days. So
yeah, I only hope that our listeners can forgive me the fact that I have been reading the first, let me check, the first 80 pages of the book quite some months ago, and that now today that I came here to the computer to read this with you and to do this recording that we are going to finish right now. I didn't prepare anything of that reading, so when here and there I have a wrong pronunciation of a word that I'm not so much familiar with, then I just want to ask the listeners forgiveness, because I am still not a native English speaker, and I do my very best to express myself in a way that all of you can understand me.
That's right, and I told Jörg last time that, you know, whenever he makes some kind of little tiny error like that, I'm not going to rush in and correct him, because you see, it's like this. I do carpentry, and when someone's taking a measurement or something like that, they need to take that and keep that in their head. You can't just say, hey, start talking about, the football game or whatever, You got to just let them go and continue so that they can get the job done, So oftentimes I think it's really not fitting to interrupt you, Jörg, and tell you, well, you mispronounced that. I'm not going to do that.
Oh, that's all right.
So,
That's all right, Brett, as long as the people can understand from the content that I am reading, the word that I pronounced
I think
falsely,
so.
the content of the sentence that was meant to be understood that way,
Right, and I could also flash up the page, while you're doing the reading too.
Yeah.
So the only reason I don't do that is because I don't have express permission from the author to, put pages up. I think there might be a problem if I did.
No,
I just don't want to run into that.
No, I don't think that you should care for that, because what we are doing here
Oh,
is
really?
not a reading
Okay.
of the complete book. I mean, we are reading the complete book, but we are not doing a reading from A to Z. It's not an audio book. We are
Right, that's right.
discussing the book. We are speaking about
It's a
it,
reading and
therefore it
discussion.
is-
That's right.
Therefore, Brett, it is always a fair use of copyrighted material for education purposes only.
Okay.
And-
I could always use that disclaimer anyway, and then that way that would be
you
fine.
should in every video.
Okay.
In every video,
Okay.
because you use maybe copyrighted photographs of the book, whatever. But this is absolutely necessary for educational purposes, and therefore you have this copyright law.
Yeah.
That can see to it that we are not persecuted for using copyrighted material when we want to educate people, and we don't earn any money with it. I don't earn any money with it on my YouTube
we
channel.
don't, no.
You don't earn any money with that on your YouTube
We're
channel
doing it
or
out
on
of
any
love,
other
yeah.
or on any other place. We do this because the Holy Spirit leads us to this, because this is
That's
the work that Jesus Christ gave us. He said
Mm-hmm.
in His word, He said, go into the world and preach every nation the gospel, or preach the
That's
gospel
right.
to every nation and to every creature, And this is
that's right.
And this is just the way that Brett and I evangelize. We are
Mm-hmm.
not that steadfast in the Bible that we can go to a street corner or a speaking place or whatever, hold up the Bible and cite the Bible from our heart and teach to the people the gospel as it is written in the Bible. We choose to lean back on historical facts and historical moments as written down in other books to teach you the gospel. When we expose the Jesuits as the devil's work that they are, and you understand by that the devil is working very hard in this world, maybe by that you find God.
Yeah, that's the most incredible thing with this, Jörg. You're from Europe, you grew up there, you know it so well, you have all this on your belt, and I'm here in America, and I've grown up with the different type of Jesuitism, but really it's the same thing. It's a universal empire, a Catholic empire. It hasn't changed. It's shocking. It really is a shocking thing when people can come out of whatever delusion they were in and see Christ in His Word in the 1611 King James Bible, and then apply that to what's going on with our very elect politicians and governments and Jesuit-led institutions of learning everywhere. I mean, it just blows your mind. Blows mine.
It's not only because the name of the Jesuit is standing on the institution that you are visiting that all the other institutions are not Jesuit-led. Every school in the United States of America, for that part, is controlled by the Roman Catholic hierarchy in one way or another. The Roman Catholic Church claims for itself the right to educate the people. And even when the state is giving the order to educate the people, the state must be subservient to the church. It's that easy.
It is.
And that's why everywhere you go in this world, whatever education you follow, your education will always be based on Roman Catholic doctrine, Roman Catholic tradition, Roman Catholic idolatry, and the Jesuitical invented Medici method of learning against learning. And with that, I'm gonna close and leave for Bret the closing words of the broadcast. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Until next time, and I hope then we're gonna read another big chunk out of the Codeword Barbelon from P.D. Stuart, the Sons of Loyola and their plans for world domination. They want world domination, and they want on the outside the Pope to rule. On the inside, they want to have the rule. Thanks, Bret, for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you, Jörg. And I want to just close with a simple statement that we observe the 70 weeks of Daniel being fulfilled through the book of the chapter 9 book of Daniel, and that this is a very, very important and careful study for anyone that wishes to get closer to the real truth. It starts with the prophet Daniel and his what would you say, prophecy of the 70 weeks being fulfilled through Christ and the coming of Christ and his death and resurrection.
The fulfillment of the 70 weeks prophecy of Daniel chapter 9 verses 24 through 27 is found in the Gospel of Matthew, Mark, Luke and John.
That's right. So anyway, we should wrap it up here, and very, very grateful for Jörg taking his time and hoping that we can get together again soon. And I just asked that the Lord will bless this recording, and I hope it reaches a lot of people and opens their eyes. And we'll see you next time, Jörg. And this is all for now. And I'd like to say bye-bye and take care and blessings in our Messiah, Jesus Christ.